The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt is an action-adventure RPG set in a medieval fantasy world, released in 2015 by CD Projekt Red for Microsoft Windows, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4. The player takes on the role of Geralt of Rivia, known as a Witcher, a professional monster killer by trade with superhuman senses and an unnaturally long life. The Witcher 3 is hands down the best RPG I've ever played. I can confidently say that it's also one of the finest games ever crafted, but it's not without its faults. Let me start this review by saying that my first playthrough of the game was on Xbox One, and my current one is on my desktop computer. So there will be some comparisons to the console version, but this version will be centered on my second playthrough, ongoing at the time of this review. Yes, it's no secret that I love this game, but don't fret. I'm not just going to gush about it and tell you why I think it's the best for no reason. I aim to tell you why it's the best, in my opinion, of course. The game is incredibly appealing visually on both console and PC. The texture work on detailed objects such as Geralt's medallion and the scabbards on his back is simply beautiful. The vistas also look very nice on PC, less so on console. It never really hits the photorealistic mark, but it never claimed to in the first place either. When in the wilds of the world, you see lots and lots of foliage, but the draw distance of such things as tall grass, shrubs, and wheat can be iffy at times. But that's definitely more of a me problem, as my graphics card is pretty powerful, but not a monster by any means. Being in the city streets of the game is also quite immersive, due in no small part to the painstaking detail on things like the muddy pathways of the poor districts and the finely crafted merchants' stands in the rich ones. Character and enemy models also stand out, especially during cinematics with main characters. The subtle movements of the actors' faces is not lost in dialogue. The level of detail even goes as far as showing makeup running down their face after crying. Occasionally you'll see minor visual bugs, such as objects clipping through the character's clothing, but nothing game-breaking by any stretch. I also really appreciate the purposeful lack of a lens flare, as I find them really annoying in games, really ruins my immersion. This is one of my only really big complaints about the game as a whole, and it's that the music is pretty repetitive. It's definitely regional, meaning you're more likely to hear certain songs in certain areas, but if you're doing a long quest that all takes place in one region, you're going to hear the same song over and over again. It's not that the soundtrack is bad, just the opposite actually. It's catchy and fits the tone of the game very well. I just wish there were a little more variety. Sound effects are also good for the most part, with the sword swings and impacts feeling chunky and heavy. The voice acting is also superb most of the time, with most of the actors sounding engaged and in character, with only a few repeat actors playing multiple characters and a few phoned-in lines here and there. While most of the dialogue is serious, and with Geralt being so gruff all the time, it's a good thing the developers have a sense of humor with some of their dialogue options. The Witcher 3 does explore some pretty dark themes at times, so I'm really glad they decided to do this. Only other issue is that there are some blatant stock sound effects, namely some of the horse whinnying sounds and monster shrieks. Being the third game in the series might dissuade someone who hasn't played the other two, but I really implore you to pick it up regardless. There's plenty of videos online summing up the lore of the other two games, and even an option at the beginning of a new playthrough to just use a default canon world state. Now, in regards to the main storyline, holy shit! Just wow. It's long, it's complicated, it's emotional, and it's full of meaningful and impactful choices. And above all, it's a hell of a lot of fun. There are so many goddamn side quests in this game as well. I seriously thought I'd done all of them in my console playthrough, but boy was I wrong. I'm still coming across new missions, and they still manage to shine and be engaging after 100 plus hours combined across platforms. The pure variety between missions is just astounding. The treasure hunts are a personal favorite. On console, I dropped the main story for about 10 hours just to go exploring and diagram hunting. And at the end, you actually get top-tier rewards for your efforts, like master-crafted weapons and armor. Every quest feels like it has a purpose, and it never really feels like you're wasting your time, which is a big problem in the RPG genre. Important dialogue options are highlighted in yellow, while white options are there for extra information. Usually it's a good idea to take these extra options, as extra information can sometimes save your life. There is a shitload of characters in this game too, and a lot of them have confusing and hard to remember names. And thank God there's a glossary in the menu that lets you read up on any character at any time. A very helpful addition. There's 3 main areas in the vanilla game: Velen, the countryside; Novigrad, a city oppressed by literal witch hunters; and the Skellige Isles, ruled by Norse-like clans and roaming with danger. I found myself enjoying my time in Skellige the most, in no small part to the beauty of its environments. The optimization is where the console version fell flat on its face. 50-second loading times, stuttering between lines of dialogue, fading between characters to mask loading, and seriously, there is a lot of loading in this game. If you play this on console, get ready to spend a significant amount of time just waiting around. The reason it took me so long to get around to playing this game a second time is because I didn't want to deal with all the slow loading times. But I put my desktop together eventually, installed this game on the solid-state drive for slightly better performance, and the biggest personal issue I had was gone. It hits the main menu from the Steam library in about 10 seconds, and loads entire in-game regions in about 12 to 15. I know you're probably all used to this, but as someone relatively new to PC gaming, this was incredible for me. It's absolutely meant to be played here, as seen not just from the optimization, but also from the controls. With keyboard and mouse, Geralt is incredibly responsive to movement inputs, even on horseback. This is not the case with the controller. Movements can lag behind inputs, and I often felt like I was hoping I would go the way I was trying to more than I was actually doing so. The Witcher 3 has you running around a huge open world accomplishing tasks that vary wildly from quest to quest. You'll be exploring caves, riding on horseback, fighting humans and monsters alike, and speaking with a huge host of characters both new and old. The combat, of which there is a lot, is fluid and satisfying. There's a lot of potential diversity for character builds in this game, all of which can become vastly overpowered if skill points are allocated properly, which I personally love in an RPG. The system can be a little abrasive to new players, but with time it becomes pretty simple to plan and execute point distribution. It really makes you feel like you have the power as the player to become a force to be reckoned with. Fair warning though, if you do try to make your build overpowered, play on the hardest or second to hardest difficulty setting, as the combat will be absolutely trivial if you don't. Players can mix skills of sword combat, magic, and alchemy to fend off man and beast enemies alike, all 3 of which are very much viable options. My first playthrough was very combat oriented with a few magic spells, known as signs in the game here and there, but my current one is much more of an all-rounder, doing much more sign-oriented combat and alchemical buffing. The combinations of things you can do for combat is staggering, and it really adds a lot of replay value if you like trying new methods of gameplay. It's actually pretty deep when you look into it. The game's missions are broken into 4 categories: main quests, secondary quests, Witcher contracts, and treasure hunts. Main quests are pretty self-explanatory. They're usually long and span a dozen or so individual objectives. Secondary quests are typically shorter, some being completed with only 2 or 3 objectives, while some start simple and then grow into crazy and elaborate missions with tense and dramatic finales. Witcher contracts are high-quality side quests where the people of the land need a monster slain and they hire you for the job. These are by far some of the best quests in the game, with a few being routine go here kill this, and a few being downright masterfully written and executed. You'll track beasts using your superhuman senses, sometimes following footprints or tracing a strong smell, like a cartoon character lusting after a pie in the neighbor's window. These quests are also set aside by their occasional unique cutscenes where Geralt will lay a trap and then wait for the creature, and there's a real sense of suspense and tension and fear when you're waiting for the monster to show up back to its lair for battle. You get paid the most for the Witcher contracts, and if you play your cards right, you can actually trick NPCs into giving you 2 rewards sometimes. If you don't mind scamming someone, that is. Geralt is also customizable, with a few options for hair and beard styles being available, as well as a huge amount of armors to choose from. And let me tell you, when you finally find a look that you love, you won't be able to get enough of it. I ended up wearing the default chest piece for about 30 hours of the game on my current playthrough, and then I found this piece of heavy armor made from chainmail and with a fur wrap around the neck. I absolutely love the way this looks, especially the way his hair flows down the collar next to his neck. And I really encourage you to mix and match hair, beard, and armor styles until you find a look that you love. Once you're really happy with his appearance, it really does amplify your immersion and overall enjoyment tenfold. Seriously. The rest of the gameplay also has these smart little design choices that anyone who notices them will appreciate, such as your sword not colliding with walls or pillars like it would in a game like Dark Souls, Geralt's face actually moving when it would appear he's just narrating out loud, and a map salesman to unlock fast travel points in Skellige, the third large area of the game, as most players are dozens of hours in at that point and might just want to skip the long journeys between zones. In regards to the DLC, just get the Season's Pass. I need you to take my word on this and just buy the Season Pass. The 2 pieces of priced DLC are some of the best out there, Blood and Wine especially. Hearts of Stone was a bit shorter, but the utter suspense and drama from the cinematics toward the end justify the price tag on their own. The rest of the missions are based in the default game world, but take the player to areas they've not likely been before. The new characters are fleshed out, interesting, and develop as the expansion goes on, Olgierd especially. Some of the content is also pretty funny, one mission specifically where a ghost inhabits the player's body and shares it with Geralt, but just wants to party and have a good time. On the flip side, Blood and Wine offers an entirely new, huge playable area and a brand new main quest tier series of missions that simply can't be missed. The new zone just offers so much new content of such a high value that I actually can't believe it's not its own game. Not to mention the many free DLCs that only serve to make the whole experience better. CD Projekt Red are not only excellent developers and programmers, but I genuinely feel like they care about their customers and players. When I bought the game for console, it even came with a little thank you leaflet from the team showing appreciation for buying the game, which made me all the happier to buy it again on Steam. In closing, yeah, I love this game. The few flaws are so minor that I think they can be easily overlooked by most players. A fair warning before you buy this game though, prepare to sink a lot of time into it. It really doesn't feel like a distraction game that you'd play while you were burned out from something else. It really does feel like the thing that you'd play every chance you get for weeks or even months until you're pretty sure you've done everything. Then you'll come back to it and start fresh after the better part of a year and do it all again. Or at least that's what I did. I give The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt a 9.75 out of 10.